Hey guys, this is White Manga here with that new video on how to draw clothings and folds and creases and all that. And I'm going to be giving 17 tips. As you guys know, these videos are this is going to be a tutorial slash whatever on how to draw clothing. So you guys can take what you learn here or and apply it to whatever you're drawing, whether you're creating storyboards or just illustrations or comics or whatever. And this tutorial is basically going to focus on realistic, not realistic folds. I mean, inspired by realistic folds in the sense that they're stylized. So stylized folds and simplified in a way. Something that you can find in cartoons and animations and stuff like that. So if you're interested, stick around. If you're not, still stick around. um, right before we get into it, just want to mention for those who don't know who I am White Manga, the creator of Apple Black. If you want to read the first 4 chapters of Apple Black, you can check that out on Saturday AM. There'll be links to all of that and my social media, and you'll be able to purchase Volume 1 with all 9 chapters. Well, not all, but the first 9 chapters in Volume 1. And you can check that out, and any support I get is appreciated. And now that's out the way, let's get into this vid. Tip number 1 is, draw the object behind the clothes first. Now I'm not going to focus too much on this. I actually drew this character in a separate video, so I'll leave a link for you guys to go check that out. And the name of the character is Sano, is the main character of my comic Apple Black. Again, if you want to see me actually put this together, I'll leave a link for y'all to check that out, because that's probably like the video before this one. But the idea is that you draw the objects or the characters that are behind the clothing, and draw the characters that be. The idea is that you draw the characters that are behind the clothing, because the characters or the objects behind or wearing the clothes are what dictate how the clothes are going to fit or how the folds are going to look and things like that. Tip 2 is, the thinner the material, the more it will fold. Likewise, the thicker the material, the more it will fold. For instance, now I'm drawing the collars, and the collars are usually thicker than the rest of the cloth because there's like more material there, so it's thicker, and because it's thicker, it maintains its shape. Folds, for instance, things like silk and stuff like that, those will fold more than, say, I don't know, something thicker, maybe leather. Not that leather doesn't fold, but silk is a little more, it's freer. If air blow, if there a little breeze blows a little for a second there, silk is gonna fly a whole lot more than, say, leather. So I'm basically putting the clothing on the character, and adding in the buttons. It's just a basically regular white T-shirt, and I'm adding in all the buttons and stuff like that, and streamlines, which some of these things I'll get to in later tips. But that's basically all this is, just going in with the character, adding little lines, and creating a T-shirt. And for the next tip, you will see that the fitted clothes tend to have smaller bumps. What I mean by bump is that you see that little bump at the the side of his torso. After the bump, there's always usually like a line, like a fold line, just indicating folds clearly. But the bump there, it usually happens when say because he can say bend his body sideways at that point. So usually a bump can happen at that point, because like the clothing kind of remembers it in a way, maybe as he moves or stuff like that. So it's almost like the bump is like waiting to happen, or is just ready to happen. It also happens at the sides of the arms and things like that, but you'll see what I mean in a second. And you can if you go look at some other, say, anime or manga, you can easily recognize what I'm talking about. So it can happen. It usually happens anywhere the body can bend, and that's also where folds happen. So folds and bumps kind of go together a little bit. So see here, adding another bump on the other side, and you can see the fold lines on his left armpit area. Sometimes if the shirt's like really tight, you see like lines close to the button, but in this case the shirt's not tight, so we're gonna leave that. as is, and I'll explain more a whole lot in a sec. Here, I'm gonna like give an example of, say, like a really muscular person wearing a tight t-shirt, which is what tip 4 is, which is stretch clothes will have, tiny bumps and lines to indicate, the stretch. In this case, like the buttons are really pulling the shirt together, so you see a whole lot of fold lines there, and a little bump there right before the shirts gets tucked in. And moving into tip 5, the stretch lines of the folds originate from the point of touch or motion. So it's like the shirt, for the most part, is going to be smooth in the areas that the muscles are touching the shirts, but in the little areas where part of the body goes back in, you'll see, focus lines or bumps there. And going back to Sano's shirt here, it's kind of an example. That's where it's kind of like where his chest ends. So you see like lines right under it. So it's kind of like the chest is almost stretching the shirt out a little bit, and the lines are bringing it back down to, normal level. Tip 6 is, don't add too much folds or bumps unless it's necessary. I've seen a lot of people, maybe when they draw clothes and they add like too many folds, and it kind of doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up as much as it should. As you can see back again, it's smooth in the areas where the muscle pops out, but once the muscle is going back in, you see a lot of lines and like fold lines and bumps and stuff like that, especially in the case of the stretched t-shirt. You can see the buttons are really pulling the shirt together, so it's stretching out, and you see more lines there, more bumps and stuff like that. So here, just fooling around and adding a little more, just a few more lines to indicate that it's a shirt. And here I'm going to add a tie, which leads me to another tip of, like, kind of thinking of things in layers. The same way you had the body before you put in the clothes is the same. For instance, things like a tie, you can also think of it the same way. So you're adding a tie after. It's almost like you're drawing the clothes on the person in a way, like they're wearing it, but you're drawing it on them. So you're putting in the tie afterwards. Now, with time you can get used to it, to where you would need to follow these rules or techniques and things like that if you're used to it, so you can draw the tie first, and avoid drawing any lines or buttons or things like that. But it's like practice and time and stuff like that. I'm trying to be thorough with the tips I'm giving. Giving another example with the whole tie thing, and again, you can see that the shirt's tucked in. So when shirts are tucked in, they usually have a little bump, and they'll have folds as well. And I think that's a tip. I'm just here trying to let you guys remember that when fitted clothes tend to have like smaller bumps, but more fold lines. It depends. More fold lines in the part of the body that kind of goes back in, like the muscles that kind of go back in. They'll have more fold lines, but the muscles that are really like touching the clothes would be smooth, and the clothes would take almost the exact same shape of the body. So here I'm adding, adding more clothes, more of the putting the shirt on Sano a whole lot more. Tip to keep in mind is that the folds change based on the positioning of the character or the object behind it. So I mean, his hands are doing two different things, right? So I mean, this is really obvious. The hands are doing two different things, so the folds are going to be different. That's really all it is. And here you can see where his hand bends, that tends to have a whole lot more fold. Just immediately after the arm starts, it has more folds there. It's like once you understand where muscles are, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Once you understand where muscles go, the muscles that will touch the clothes, and the clothes will kind of form. It'll kind of like form the body shape, and the part of the clothes that are not touching the body will usually have the bumps around there, and the bumps kind of go hand in hand with the lines. Here are the shoulders. I'm adding in the lights, like very light streamlines to indicate like sewing for the shirt, right? So it's not like after that line it's like different material. It's the same shirt, but just adding little streamlines there to indicate like the sewing of the shirt. It makes it look more like a shirt. I did the same thing in the button area, where you can see like two lines on the left side of the shirt. but that just like indicates the shirt. If you go study or look at shirts, it's the same thing. And right there, and at his wrist, I'm doing a little bump there because it's almost same thing as tucking in. It's because in that way it's almost like it's the sewing kind of like tucks in part of the shirt near the collar, right? And you can look at both collars and you can see like a little bump before the shirt is finished, right? Because the sewing kind of does a little tuck in there, so you can see some folds. And sometimes the folds are not that much. Sometimes there aren't any folds at all. It depends on the shirt. Um, but you see a little fold, a bump, and a fold right before the shirt and the sleeves finish, because that has to do with the sewing, but it's the same idea with tucking in the shirt. So you see more folds at the elbows, areas where they're joints, right? Where you have a joint, there's usually folds there. Even when the hand is straight, there'll still be a little bump there because indicating that he has bent the arm before, right? So the clothing kind of almost remembers that he's done it, and sometimes the folds and the fold lines are still there. It's almost like a wrinkled shirt. When you see a wrinkled shirt, the wrinkles are still there, but no one's wearing it or doing anything. And it's basically kind of like the same idea. Here I'm just kind of drawing it to remind you, like, let's say if air blows clothing, if the cloth is heavier, if the material is thicker, it's not gonna move too much. It's not gonna be flowing around too much. But if it's light and it's thinner, it'll do whatever. It'll do as the air pleases. As the breeze blows, it's gonna follow. So here, Santa was kind of like holding his jacket on his shoulders, and you can see it's a little. Even though it's not like flowing as flowing anyhow. It's not all over the place like, say, a Superman cape, because the material of the jacket or suit is thick. So moving into tip 12, same thing. Thicker materials actually remember the fold lines, even if you're not doing anything. So, for instance, if you go look at One Piece Luffy's jeans, like right in the crotch area, you see a lot of fold lines because it's like jeans, right? They remember the lines there indicating fold. And here he's standing in a pose that it has the bumps. So the bumps, again, most of the folds and the bumps happen at joint areas. So there's that. So it's kind of like adding bumps at places where the body bends, and adding in the bumps and adding in the fold lines, keeping in mind the material of the cloth and how much how big the bump is and how much lines are going to be in there. If the more fitted it is, the tinier the bumps, but sometimes more lines in the places where the body bends, right? So just like the muscular guy on the right, it'll be smooth at the places where his muscles touch the shirt, because the shirt is just doing exactly what his body is doing. But at say his elbow area, there's going to be a lot of folds there because he's like bending the shirt. See, now I'm just giving examples, and here I have like a different guy, but he's big. He's a really thick, fat guy. So you see a lot of lines at the bumps, but the shirt is kind of stretched out, right? So there'll be some smooth parts, and the places that are being stretched out will have more folds, right? But it'll be smoother at places that his body's touching the shirt. I didn't put streamlines in this one, but that's something to keep in mind. It's not all the time. It depends on your style, but for the most part, in my style at least, I always have streamlines. So here I'm doing another shirt. So this kind of like giving you guys variety on how to do these things, and I'm doing it in different ways. Another tip that would help, that it's not really on here, is kind of understanding the human body, or the object that's wearing the shirt or wearing the clothes, that has the clothes on. If you understand that, you kind of understand how the folds would work as well. Now, one of the mistakes I see sometimes when people do folds is kind of like they're just forcing a lot of bumps and forcing a lot of fold lines and stuff like that, and it doesn't necessarily look good. Not impossible, but it doesn't necessarily look good. And for this case, kind of do it differently. And as you're drawing, you can see how it's almost like it's the part of the pants are like tucked in, so you can see the bumps and the fold lines where it's tucked in as well. And sometimes, depending on your style, I've said it already in a way how you keep track of the amount of folds and bumps you use. Like, too much of it can really look awkward sometimes. And the same idea kind of applies to like tissue paper. Here it's kind of like that would kind of be like the streamline to like indicate that, okay, that's tissue paper. But in this case, we'll be using it for clothing. Sometimes air movement, this is tip 13, air movement can also dictate the folds and the movement of the clothes. So, but you also have to keep in mind the material, and whether it's thick or thin or things like that. So here we have something like a flag, and you can just kind of give it a little crest here. Nothing too fancy, but there's usually that from like where the flag begins, there is kind of like a curved fold that's kind of like going. It's almost like it's pointing to the other end. Here I'm just playing around and doing a different kind of flag that's maybe torn. A tip 14 would just be to kind of step back and understand the basic idea behind folds. So that'll be like, those little curves and things like that, and understanding how they work, and it'll really help you when you're doing the main thing. And you see the fold at the top of the flag, they kind of have this arrow pointing towards each other kind of thing most times. So from on the left side where the arrow starts to the right, and going off to the tent, like, because that's what I'm going to draw with it, like a tent thing. So it depends on how you look at it. Maybe there's like an object inside holding it together, and then you have your so that's like the object that's kind of dictating the shape. And I'm just gonna remove that because that's going to be covered. And you can see that the lines are pointing to where the lines are pointing to, kind of remembering tip 5, where the lines of the folds originate from the point of touch or motion. So you kind of have, they're like nails holding the cloth to the floor, so you have the lines pointing towards that direction. And it's all curved. If the tent was like really stretched out, the lines will be straighter. But if they're like really stretched, there will be more lines pointing towards that direction. But here it's not too much, so you have that little, it's a curved line. And here, these are just like more, more characteristics of clothing, just to help you, applying the same idea to, other clothes. So that's like maybe drapes or something, or the end of a cape. And the other one, the next one's like maybe a page of a book, and the other is just, I don't know what that is, but the idea of how you're seeing each side doing what they want. And that's like a thicker one, and this would be like a thinner one. The thinner one obviously conforms more than the thicker. So here I fool around a little drawing here of Saitama from One Punch Man, and I'm just going to be adding folds to it and adding little bumps. Now, because the material is thicker, the bumps are not as, they're not that much, because it's thick. But the bumps, the fold lines will be there because, again, the thicker material, like I said, remembers and things like that. And you have his probably like a leather glove, and you see, the glove will be doing this thing. But let's say where the wrist is, there'll be a lot of fold there because the glove, you can say, is used to folding at that point, so it kind of remembers the fold even if he's not doing anything. So adding more folds at where the shirt is tucked in, and you see the bumps on the sides. You also, another tip will be to add bumps and fold lines where the cape starts. and then from there it can kind of like flow and do whatever it wants. These are things that, you know, if you practice a lot, you'll be able to notice on your own. So at the same time, even though I'm giving this tips, there are some things that maybe when I wouldn't have remembered, that you kind of have to know on your own when you study these things. So if you really want to learn them, you know, you kind of have to study this. Maybe look at real drawings or other stylized drawings, read your favorite comics, and kind of notice what the artist is doing. One Punch Man, great manga or anime, by the way. Y'all should check it out if you haven't already. So here, you know, again, his thick gloves. You see the folds at the fingers. So the same thing applies. You see some streamlines to just indicate it's a glove. More folds there. And yeah, that's it. Now that's just shade. And really that's just it. But it really helps when you add those lines to let the audience kind of know that that's not just skin. That's you know, it's cloth. It's some kind of cloth or some kind of material. Also, you can add folds to the ends of you know, like trousers or things like that, if it's like all baggy. So you can add like folds and bumps at the end, and most of the folds would be right before the shoe. So that's another thing to keep in mind. These are more like examples. With these tips, you know, with time, I'll do more tutorials on specific things, maybe drawing fur or things like that to help you guys. But the tip 17 will be to study the characteristics of clothing, whether it's real or stylized. And that's going to help you a whole lot more than just watching one video. So tip 16 will be, you know, don't expect to watch one video and get it all. It kind of like takes time to figure out all this stuff and a lot of practice. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed all the tips. If you feel there are some tips or ideas that I missed, you can leave them in the comments below. If you have any questions, you can also leave that in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video. You know, likes and favorites and shares really help the video and really help the channel a lot. So I really appreciate anyone who does that. Again, you can read Apple Black, the first 4 chapters free. Or you can purchase the first 9 chapters in Volume 1. Leave links to where you can purchase Volume 1, physical copy, paperback, and, you know, sends out to anywhere. Almost anywhere, but almost anywhere in the world. So international. So y'all can check that out. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like what you see. There are more videos where I give tutorials and more stuff. I have some random videos. I have some fun videos, more tutorials, more contests coming soon. So, you know, y'all can check that out. You know, I think that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys learned something, at least. And this is White Manga, and I'm outie.